All right, we've got Dana with us today, and I'm very, very happy that Dana took the time to speak to us and to the students and everybody else out there, because Dana has an amazing story to tell. Dana was one of my students about 5 years ago. She took microbiolab, and I've really learned a lot through interacting with Dana, and we've kept up over the last 5 years. Usually Dana comes to my class and tells her story, but because not everybody is in my class, so we want to make it permanent so that other people have the advantage too. So what I've learned from Dana is all about Lyme disease, and you may not be very familiar with it or don't know many people who have that disease. And a lot of people have no clue what it actually entails. So Dana has been gracious enough to share her story, emotional at times.
Definitely.
But it's been a really good thing. So I want to just ask you now, because we have some interviews from students in a few minutes, what do you think would be an advice for you to give to our students, our young researchers, our young physicians? What do they need to know when they go out into the real world?
I think it's important for health professionals to have empathy for the people that they're seeing, whether it's a medical student and learning how to practice medicine and seeing patients for the first time, listening to their patients rather than just deeming them crazy or nuts. And if it's on the other side where you have researchers that aren't feeling well, or I think it's important to be your own health advocate.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things what our students need to learn and be aware of, and I think often it's a lot of things are not textbook, and they expect it to have textbook symptoms, but a lot of things in life are just way above and beyond.
It's not that simple,
yes.
and it's not as simple as an algorithm either, which is what how a lot of doctors do, and I understand because there's so much to know, and it's a really good strategy to have an algorithm, but sometimes it's not always right. Whereas with Lyme disease, the first thing they ask is if you've been bit by a tick. Well, a lot of people don't know that they've been bit by a tick, as well as they ask if you've seen a bullseye rash. And again, like, how would you know if it was on your back and no one else was around to see that?
Right. And only a few people, not everybody gets that rash either. So.
Right. And then the algorithm, if you answer those questions no, then they move on to the next. And that's not always helpful for being diagnosed.
Yep. That's challenging. Keep your minds open. Another question I wanted to ask Dana is, so over the years since we've been working together, we've also went out to collect ticks, and we have actually cultured Borrelia burgdorferi in the lab, and Dana was able to look at those organisms in the microscope and under the scanning microscope. How did it make you feel when we actually went out there to collect the organisms and when you looked at them under the microscope?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people would think scared, but it's not. It was actually exhilarating because I had all the resources right there to help me understand what was going on inside my body. So we have a long way to go with studying even just Lyme disease and a plethora of other pathogenic infectious diseases. But it was very life-changing because I didn't realize that I could even do something like that or see them behave. It's just in the way that people say that they behave, right? Because we actually literally saw these spirochetes forming biofilm right in front of our eyes, and that's what makes treatment so hard for Lyme, is that they form biofilms in arterial walls, and antibiotics can't penetrate that. And so how do you treat something you can't get to? And so that's something that has changed research, and what can we do in addition to antibiotics to help get through that biofilm. So it was exhilarating. It was awesome. I'll never forget it. I have those pictures tucked away. I look at them often. They're amazing. And videos. We took videos too.
It was awesome. Well, I'm really glad that you're still supporting our efforts to educate our students and to share that experience. Although not always scientific, but I think listening to patients, seeing things from a different point of view is really absolutely essential. And I hope we will continue this over the next years, and I'm really excited to see how well you're doing now after overcoming so many hurdles in your life, and educationally as well. You're just doing amazing. Very proud of you, Dana.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. She's always been there for me. So I appreciate you having me here.
Anytime.
What symptoms did you experience?
Some of the first symptoms I experienced was as a child, 6 years old around, and they were migraines and rashes, mostly the predominant ones that I had. But I experienced a plethora of symptoms after, so cognitive impairment, depression, anxiety. Had a lot of problems with coping with stress, any type of stressor. It could be very small, minute problems that I just could not handle. I would just be paranoid. I just couldn't handle anything small. Fatigue was huge for me. Like I joined a soccer league when I was younger, and I couldn't keep up with the students. Like my endurance would never match theirs. Although I didn't understand that at first, for a long time. I didn't get why I couldn't keep up and have that endurance as like the other kids that I had that's been around. So those are just some of the things that I experienced.
Are you still experiencing any symptoms?
It's hard for me to tell you if it's from Lyme or not. So far as I know, I'm in remission from Lyme, but I have a hypothyroid disease from having Lyme for so long. It might be symptoms from that rather than Lyme. If I had to guess, and Lyme is still playing a small part in my cognitive function. So I have a hard time with attention, and also keeping my focus, and then as well as retaining any information. My memory is not as good as it used to be. I'm not as sharp. So that's the only thing that I've seen drag on since treating.
What advice would you give someone who has just been diagnosed with Lyme disease?
So much. I would tell them to be their own health advocate, because they know their bodies better than anybody, and find a great Lyme literate doctor that they can have an awesome relationship with, because that was one of the things that I had to do for myself, and wow, what a difference it made to have a doctor that had incredible empathy for the people that were going through it. Not having to experience it herself was huge and very pertinent to treating me during my entire process of Lyme disease treatment. So don't give up either. You will get better. Find what's good for you. Just because someone else did long-term antibiotics doesn't mean that that's something that you have to do. Your mileage may vary because you're different. And so just listen to the gut too. Listen to your gut and try not to go too much of what other people are doing. And that was big for me. Once I accepted that, I was able to heal a lot faster on my own.
So I've heard that you can experience a lot of co-infections with Lyme. How do you define a co-infection, and did you ever experience any yourself?
So a co-infection is another pathogen that can coexist with Lyme inside, infecting the animal that it's infecting. So it's unfortunate that you don't just get Lyme anymore, but a lot of times you get another pathogen that hurts you along with that tick bite. So there's a lot of different things that you can get. I'll just throw a couple of them out there. We have babesia, which is a protozoan infection. It's a lot like malaria. That can also tag along with the tick bite, and it changes the way you treat for Lyme, because a lot of if you treat Lyme with doxycycline, you can't treat a lot of these other co-infections with doxycycline. You need an anti-malarial drug, and that's not gonna so it changes definitely the game of treating. Now, as far as me and what co-infections I've actually experienced two. So the first one that I got diagnosed with was Rocky Mountain spotted fever. That one had a host of symptoms very similar to Lyme, so it was very hard to tell apart. I had a blood test to tell me I had Rocky Mountain. And the other one I experienced was Bartonella, which is cat scratch fever. So I don't know if I got both of those infections along with the first bite I got with Lyme. It can happen, but you can also, since your immune system's suppressed, you can also pick that up along the way. So cat scratch fever you can obviously get from a cat scratching you, right, or biting you. So that's basically what I experienced and how you can get them.
So because you were diagnosed so late, you didn't know if you got all of those together or if you got a couple of those after?
Correct. You can get them together.
Mm-hmm.
It happens, definitely, but you can also get them separate.
Okay. So did you struggle to find a doctor that was willing to give you long-term antibiotics?
Definitely. So I was very fortunate that the infirmary doctor even diagnosed me with Lyme. However, she is an infirmary doctor. She does the basic stuff, and when it's that in depth of a disease, she gave me a month of doxycycline, and then I asked her for more because I wasn't feeling a lot better, and she made a great decision for me. She said, I will refer you out to a doctor that is more capable of taking care of you and your treatment. So she did the best thing for me, which was move me to someone that was a little bit more knowledgeable. I think she would have been fine with giving me longer antibiotics, but not as long as I got it, because I definitely went back to her to thank her. I gave her a plant because I felt so happy that she listened to me and gave me a chance. So I went back in there and I told her, and she was like, I'm just curious what type of antibiotics you're on now. That was 3 months later, and I was on a lot more and a lot different. I was still on Doxy, which is what she put me on. And she was very open-minded and appreciative of me coming back in there and thanking her, because I definitely yelled at one of her nurses. I wasn't in a good place when I went there, so I went to that person and apologized and told her, look, I wasn't in a good place. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry, because I know that upset her. So I went back and thanked her, but I knew that I had to find someone better that better understood the disease. So I did. I found someone here, local, and she treated me 2 years.
Wow.
And then a little after that. Sorry, go ahead.
So from being on antibiotics for so long, I know that those can give you side effects. So did you experience any symptoms from the antibiotics, or were you able to tell if they're from Lyme or from your other diseases or from the antibiotics?
That was hard. I know that there was one antibiotic in particular that made me feel very nauseous and made me very sick. And that was metronidazole. So yes and no, if that makes any sense. I have symptoms when I would take antibiotics get worse because you go through something called detox. And so if you're killing off a large number of bacteria in the body, your liver needs to filter that out. But if it gets overrun, it's not going to filter out very fast. It kind of gets clogged. So they tell you when treating for Lyme that you need to detox a lot. So that means that you have to increase, drinking water, any way you can secrete, get it out. So a lot of times the symptoms that I would experience when I was treating was just my already symptoms getting worse because I needed to detox more. But how I could differentiate if it was the antibiotic side effects was more or less what symptoms I still had after I did a big detox. Does that make sense? So I would a lot of times I would know that a lot of gut issues would come from antibiotic, right?
Right, yeah.
Because it wipes out the good bacteria too. So I also was on an antifungal to help me with that. Then another side effect that I had was, like I said, nausea. And so those are the two that I really could only, hone down to being antibiotic side effects.
But the rest you weren't sure, or
I wasn't sure. Those are experience. Those symptoms I experienced already without the antibiotics. They got a little worse when I got on antibiotics because I was killing, and they call an important word is Herxheimer reaction. So that's when that's a term to talk about what I talked about earlier, where the liver gets clogged up with toxins and dead bacterial cells. So just loading up your liver. So you go through a Herxheimer reaction. We call it herxing. And so that's just and your symptoms are intensified by that. So I already had those symptoms there before I even started antibiotics. And when I started antibiotics, it just got worse. So it's kind of hard to blame antibiotics directly for being, that's a side effect from antibiotics. It just sounds like it's working.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So from taking so many antibiotics for so long, did you ever become resistant to any of them? Or did any of them ever not work?
So there was times where when I first started ciprofloxacin, that specific antibiotic was to treat Bartonella. I was on ciprofloxacin and doxy for a little bit, and then she switched me to ciprofloxacin and Flagyl, and I was on that, and I pulsed that for a little bit. I was very, very much back and forth, so to kind of keep it from myself becoming resistant to it. The one thing I did see happen to me, and I don't know if it's resistant or if I just didn't need to be treating that certain co-infection or infection. So I did Cipro for a long time, and I felt 100 times better when that specific antibiotic was used in my treatment. So that's where I saw a lot of relief from symptoms come from, was when I started Cipro. Well, I stopped Cipro for a little bit, and then I went back on it like that next year, and it didn't do the same as it did the first time, like as far as making me feel good, right? So I can't really say if it's resistant, but that's the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question, because it very well could have been that it's not working as well for me anymore.
Right, but you were never told by a doctor that you were resistant to any?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
So when were you finally diagnosed?
I was finally diagnosed in December of 2011 after a long time of being misdiagnosed.
And who finally diagnosed you?
It was actually an infirmary doctor here on campus, which was ironic because I didn't think that would ever be a doctor to diagnose me, but it was here.
How long did it take for you to be diagnosed?
When I started searching for answers was probably somewhere in the in the early 2000s, so around 2004, 2005, so quite some time, 10 decade, to finally figure out what was going on. I had symptoms well before that, but to where I was self-aware that this wasn't normal life and how you should feel. So it took a good 10, 15 years to finally get somewhere.
Were you ever misdiagnosed?
Yes, definitely. About that decade, I went to many doctors, and many doctors just kind of deemed me as mentally ill or nuts or hypochondriac, and it was a struggle to get to where I was in 2011. And when I got there, I had just about given up, and the doctors would just. I understand why they thought that way, because I would come in and I'd be hysterical. I wouldn't feel good, and when you don't feel good, you're kind of a mess, and we can be emotional sometimes. So I would sit there and just vomit all these symptoms that didn't make sense to me, didn't make sense to them, and Lyme disease can be very overlapping with other symptoms of many, many diseases. So I understand why they just automatically labeled me with depression and anxiety. I did have those. I did. But I knew in my heart and just that there was something way more than just that mental illness aspect.
And what was your reaction when you were finally diagnosed?
Oh, that was a very emotional time for me, because I didn't know about Lyme disease. And when I went into her and I had a terrible rash, which I think was the main thing that this doctor saw in me. Like, okay, I think that this patient has depression, but depression can't cause this rash with her eyes swelling shut. So there has to be something else that I'm missing. She hasn't changed anything in her diet. She says, there's nothing that she can really be allergic to. So she just thought, oh, okay, Lyme disease. And I almost didn't go and get that blood test done, because I gave up almost. But something told me to go have it done anyways. Just check it off the list like everything else. So I did, and come to find out I had it. I didn't understand it. I didn't look it up. I did after I found out I got diagnosed, and it was very much of a validation. Like, oh my gosh, it hasn't been mental illness this whole time. Because when you have someone sit there and tell you, you're crazy, you're making this up, your symptoms are all psychosomatic, it starts to wear on you. Like, oh, maybe I am. Maybe I need to be in a psych ward. Maybe all the things that these doctors are saying are true. So it was a very good day. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but I knew that I had a road. Whereas before I didn't have I didn't have any way. So I was definitely in a panicked state before. So it was very much a relief to find out that I had something that, you know, I can actually work with.
Like there's a way to get better.
There's a way to get better, right? There was a path. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and so that felt really good to me. So it was victorious.